Honorable guests, curious minds, and keepers of forgotten history, today I invite you to take a journey, not forward but backward, not into the future of artificial intelligence, but into the ancient wilderness of the Ice Age. A world where giants walked, a world where mammoths ruled, but this story is not one of glory. It is a story of goodbye, of extinction, of the last day of mammoths. Imagine the chilling winds sweeping across the frozen tundra. A herd of woolly mammoths moves with purpose, massive, majestic, and made for survival. Their tusks curve like nature's crown, their fur thick as the legends they inspired. For thousands of years, they were symbols of endurance. They outlived saber-toothed predators, brutal climates, and even the turning of ages, but they could not outlive us. It wasn't a meteor that ended their reign. It wasn't fire from the sky. It was something far more silent, more human. Overhunting, rising temperatures, habitat loss, and above all, ignorance of balance, we humans walked alongside the mammoth, and instead of walking with respect, we walked with spears. We became masters of the land. But we forgot we were only one part of it. The last known mammoths lived on a tiny island called Wrangel off the coast of Russia. Isolated, trapped, dwindling in number, forgotten by time, and then one day. There were none. No trumpeting call, no thundering footsteps, just silence, the kind that echoes forever in the empty snow. So why tell this story? Because the last day of mammoths is not just about what we lost, it's a warning about what we are still losing. Today, species go extinct every single day. Forests are vanishing, oceans are choking, the planet is warming. We are repeating the same tragedy, just on a larger stage, but it doesn't have to end this way. We can learn from the last mammoth. We can shift from conquerors of nature to caretakers. We can preserve, protect, and even restore, because extinction is final, but action is powerful. For thousands of years, mammoths roamed the earth as living monuments to endurance and adaptation. Towering over the frozen tundras and grasslands of the Pleistocene epoch, these majestic creatures seemed to embody nature's raw power and its ability to survive in even the harshest of environments. They were covered in thick, woolly coats that protected them from sub-zero temperatures. Their tusks, long, curved, and strong, weren't just tools for defense or combat. They were sculptors of the landscape, used to dig through snow for grass and to fight for mates during the breeding season. Everything about the mammoth said one thing clearly. This creature was built to last, and for a time it did. The mammoths survived not just the cold, but the rise and fall of glaciers. They crossed continents, evolving and adapting as ice ages came and went. They witnessed changing ecosystems, shifting climates, and a constantly transforming world. Their lineage stretches back millions of years. These were not creatures born to vanish overnight. They had endured through time and trial, generation after generation. In many ways, the mammoth became a living symbol of how life can persevere through adversity, how nature finds a way. They were not alone, of course. The Ice Age was a time of giants, saber-toothed cats, cave bears, giant ground sloths. Yet of all these creatures, the mammoth held a special place in the ancient world. It was both feared and revered by early humans. Carvings of mammoths can still be found in caves across Europe and Asia, etched in stone by the hands of prehistoric artists who likely depended on these animals for food, tools, and even shelter. Mammoth bones were used to construct huts. Their hides made warm clothing. Their meat sustained families during harsh winters, and yet, those same humans who revered the mammoth would eventually contribute to its downfall. Despite their strength and endurance, mammoths were not invincible. The very qualities that allowed them to thrive for so long, large bodies, slow reproduction rates, reliance on vast grazing lands, also made them vulnerable. When humans expanded across the mammoth's territory, they brought with them an unrelenting hunger and advanced hunting techniques. Spears, traps, and eventually cooperative hunting strategies began to tip the balance. Mammoths that had once had no natural predators suddenly found themselves being stalked by clever, coordinated groups of humans. A single mammoth could feed a tribe for weeks, making it a high-value target. At the same time, the Earth itself was changing. As the last ice age came to a close around 10,000 years ago, global temperatures rose rapidly. Environments that had supported the mammoths, grassy steppes and cold open landscapes, began to shrink. Forests encroached on their habitats, limiting the areas where they could forage and live. Water sources shifted. Seasons changed. The world was transforming into one that no longer welcomed these Ice Age giants. The mammoth stood at the crossroads of these two powerful forces, the expansion of humankind and the transformation of the planet. Their once sprawling herds began to thin. Isolated populations became trapped in pockets of land, most notably on islands like Rangel, where the last known woolly mammoths would survive for thousands of years beyond their mainland cousins. But isolation was not enough. With fewer individuals, genetic diversity suffered. Inbreeding took its toll. Diseases, environmental stress, and human encroachment all added to the weight, pressing down on this once unshakable symbol of strength. What's most haunting is that the mammoths did not go extinct in a moment. There was no catastrophic event, no instant annihilation. Their fall was slow, silent, and gradual. Herd by herd, region by region, they disappeared from the map. And because of that, it's easy to overlook the magnitude of their loss. There were no news headlines, no mournful ceremonies, just a creeping absence until one day there were none left. Their extinction is a reminder that even nature's most formidable creations are not immune to pressure, especially when that pressure comes from us. Mammoths were not outcompeted by stronger species. They were not wiped out by disease alone. They were undone by the slow grind of environmental change and the relentless advance of human activity. Despite being icons of survival, they could not survive us. In a way, the mammoth is not just a symbol of resilience. It's also a symbol of fragility. It teaches us that strength and size are not enough, that even the giants, the ones who seem unshakable and eternal, can fall when the balance of nature is disturbed. This lesson echoes far beyond the tundras they once walked. It resonates with the plight of countless species today, creatures facing extinction not because they are weak, but because the world around them is shifting too fast, driven by the same forces that once brought down the mammoth. To understand the mammoth's fall is to understand the importance of harmony between humanity and nature. These animals survived ice and time, but could not withstand a world where human ambition outpaced wisdom. The mammoth story is not just history, it is prophecy. When we think of extinction, our minds often drift to images of apocalyptic event, asteroids crashing into Earth, volcanic eruptions darkening the skies, or dramatic climate shifts wiping out life overnight. These are the stories told about the dinosaurs, whose demise was swift and cosmic in scale. But the story of the mammoths is not a tale of sudden destruction. It is one of gradual disappearance, slow erosion, and quiet devastation. And at the center of that story is not a natural catastrophe, but humanity itself. The mammoths lived through multiple ice ages. They adapted to dramatic environmental fluctuations, outlasted predators, and traversed continents. For tens of thousands of years, they roamed across Europe, Asia, and North America, living in vast herds that left deep impressions in the snow and the soil. They were resilient by every evolutionary measure. Their bodies were marvels of adaptation, equipped with thick layers of fat, dense woolly coats, and curved tusks that helped them navigate the frozen wilderness. These were not creatures on the brink of collapse. They were strong, thriving, and deeply integrated into the ecosystems they inhabited. And yet, despite all their evolutionary advantages, the mammoths are gone. The timing of their decline tells us much. Around 10,000 years ago, as the last ice age was ending, humans were spreading into new territories, expanding rapidly with tools, fire, and a growing sense of mastery over their environment. Wherever humans appeared, large animals, megafauna, began to vanish. This pattern repeated across continents. In North America, South America, Australia, and parts of Eurasia, species that had lived for millions of years began to disappear within a few centuries of human arrival. The correlation was more than coincidence. The mammoths were slow breeders. A female might bear a calf only once every 5 to 7 years, and their young took years to mature. This slow reproductive cycle made them especially vulnerable to sustained hunting. A few kills a year by a small human group might not seem significant, but across thousands of years and expanding populations, the pressure became lethal. Unlike predators in nature, humans did not kill based on necessity alone. They killed to stockpile food, craft tools, and later to trade. With intelligence and cooperation, humans hunted mammoths more efficiently than any natural predator ever had. Hunting, however, was only part of the threat. Humans also altered the mammoth's environment. As agriculture emerged, forests were cleared, fires were used to reshape landscapes, and grazing lands were reduced. These changes fragmented the habitats that mammoths depended on. They began to lose access to the vast tundra grasslands they needed to survive. As the ecosystem shifted, so too did the availability of food. And with dwindling food sources came starvation, weakened health, and decreased reproduction rates. There is a tragic irony in how the mammoth's strengths became its downfall in a human-dominated world. Their size, which had once protected them from predators, made them easy targets for hunters seeking high returns. Their social herds, which offered safety and structure, became easier to find and follow. Their predictable migratory routes turned into traps. The very behaviors that had ensured their survival for millennia suddenly became vulnerabilities. Even on remote islands like Rangel, where a small population of woolly mammoths survived for thousands of years after their mainland extinction, the presence of humans eventually became a factor. Genetic studies show that these isolated populations suffered from inbreeding and mutations, but their decline was accelerated by environmental stress, and potentially by the arrival of humans or human-related change. In every case, the common thread tying the mammoth's extinction to the larger story of life's decline in the Holocene is the increasing dominance of our species, and while climate change played a role in reshaping habitats and ecosystems, it did not act alone or act first. The climate had shifted many times before, and the mammoths had always endured. What made the difference this time was the human presence layered on top of environmental stress. In fact, many scientists argue that mammoths could have survived the changing climate if they had not also been subjected to overhunting and habitat fragmentation by people. The combination was deadly. But it was the human factor, persistent, intelligent, and unrelenting, that pushed them over the edge. The evidence supporting this view is found not just in fossils and bones, but in tools, carvings, and kill sites left behind by ancient people. It is found in the sudden disappearance of multiple megafaunal species wherever humans arrived, and it is found in the genetic bottlenecks that appear right at the time of human expansion. This was not just a coincidence. It was a cascade set in motion by human activity. To understand the mammoth's extinction is to acknowledge a difficult truth. We are not just observers of nature, we are powerful participants in it. Our actions ripple across ecosystems, often in ways we do not immediately see or intend. In the case of the mammoths, we did not merely coexist with them. We hunted, displaced, and eventually outlived them. And perhaps most haunting of all, we did so without understanding the full impact of what we were doing. The mammoth story is not about nature failing. It is about humanity failing to recognize the weight of its own influence. These animals, once seen as indestructible icons of the Ice Age, were in fact deeply vulnerable to the expanding reach of a new and intelligent predatoress.